Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Profit Minds podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch, creator of the Profit Minds Growth System, a unique blend of profit growth, productivity acceleration, and building robust business process for scale. In every episode, I interview entrepreneurs and small business owners from around the world with a unique story to tell. You can find the show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. Well, hello, everyone. Today, my guest is Monica Rothgery, champion of Frontline Leaders and author of Lessons from the Drive-Thru. Today, we're going to be talking about how frontline leaders have the potential to build your business and change lives. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Congratulations. I understand I'm going to be show number 87, and that's a pretty impressive record for a podcast. So congratulations to you. And I can't wait to jump in. It's my favorite topic. I love talking about frontline leaders and all the potential they have to change lives, starting with their own.
Yeah. So tell me how you got here, right? This is the question I always ask every guest because it really informs me about them and what drives them. So since we're talking about drive-thrus, what caused you, how did you get here?
Not surprising. I started my career 30 years ago as a frontline leader. So I was a young military officer getting out of the Army, and I got recruited to work for Taco Bell. And so I was a restaurant manager for Taco Bell and struggled. Interestingly enough, they told us that team members that work at the Taco Bells are just like soldiers. And that's why you would be such a good fit for working for in a restaurant. Turns out team members and soldiers are not alike at all. And I had to, as a frontline leader, the manager of that business, I had to learn a very whole new set of skills. And those 4.5 years pretty much shaped my entire 30-year career. I did stay with the same company, Yum Brands, for 30 years. I had roles in HR and operations, and ultimately I was the chief operating officer for one of the most iconic restaurant brands, Kentucky Fried Chicken. So I was their COO here for the United States business. I was the first woman to have that job, which I'm quite proud of. And then I retired and wrote a little book about my experiences way back when I was a restaurant manager, called Lessons from the Drive-Thru.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, that you think about that whole experience that you went through and what you were told was not at all what you experienced. And I know that happens a lot, right?
I mean, I think they were well-meaning, right? It sounds right. And they are in some, I mean, it's the same age group, pretty much. Yeah. Young soldiers. It's the same, some of the same demographics. But here's the difference, right? Soldiers get weeks and weeks of training. They go to basic training. They go to advanced training where they learn their jobs. They know how to wear their uniforms. They do what they're told to do.
And they practice, they have drills, they have all kinds of stuff where they're, and they change things up on you, so that you know how to respond in the right way for being a part of that unit and all of that. And I'm guessing that you probably got 15 or 20 minutes of instruction to how to flip a burger or stuff a taco shell or whatever. And that was it.
You've got it, right? There is not very much training for team members that work, in frontline industry. They're often thrown in front of the customer with a few minutes of experience, which can be really intimidating, especially to a young person. And then, maybe they show, maybe they don't, maybe they wear their uniform, maybe they don't. So I, as a leader, had to learn a whole new set of skills.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's probably one thing that's very different is that you don't have the opportunity to call in sick when you're in the Army. I mean, you can get sick, of course, but you can't just say, "Oh, I don't feel like showing up today."
Yeah. If you no call, no show in the Army, That's called
bad things
bad
happen.
things happen. You might find yourself in a really bad situation that doesn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, it is a little different. Yeah. So what's unique about the story that you tell in Lessons from the Drive-Thru, that book? What is it that makes that such a different kind of business book?
There are a lot of business books, a lot of leadership books written by very senior leaders like myself, executives, for, mid-managers, director level, other executives. I couldn't find one book written for frontline leaders. So this is the biggest population in the employment pool. They have the most responsibility in terms of customer facing, literally collecting cash, and they get the least amount of development. And yeah.
So let me make sure that I understand what you mean when you say a frontline leader.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm hearing you talk about is the person that's in charge of, let's say the store for that shift, right?
Could be a shift manager. Ultimately, it's the person who runs the restaurant manager, the retail store manager, the hotel manager, the C-store manager, the car rental company manager who runs that enterprise.
The little operation that's there, not corporate, but
correct.
And we're talking mostly, in many cases, a franchise kind of operation.
Often, if the franchise has multiple units, right? Now, single operator, one restaurant franchisee, then they're the frontline leader and the owner. But most times, you've got a franchisee who's got multiple, establishments, and so they rely on these frontline leaders to really grow their business and be the face of their business to the community and to their customers.
Right. Yeah, that's very different from the experience that I had as a corporate. We call them first line managers, where I was managing a team, right? But we got a lot of training at Intel. I mean, they sent us off for a week of frontline manager training, off to a place with a bunch of other brand new frontline first line managers. And then we were required to take certain number of courses, other kinds of things in terms of, our own skill development and things like that. But it sounds like many times that kind of thing is overlooked.
The frontline leaders often get pretty good training in the fundamentals. How do I do this? How do I read my P&L, or how do I place an order or fill out the schedule or hire somebody in the computer? But they don't necessarily get a lot of development. How do I run the business? How do I have a difficult conversation? How do I resolve a customer dispute as it's escalating, right? Team members get very little instruction. You apply for a job one day, the next day you have a headset on and you're at the drive-thru facing customers. And I think as customers, we've all seen that experience, right? Where you go through and you're like, don't you even know what you're doing? And,
it's my first day, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's my first day. Right. But we as customers going through the drive-thru or going into that restaurant, we don't know that, right? Well, what was your first job, Steve? What was your first job?
My first job was actually as the audiovisual repair person for the school district.
Okay.
I got the teachers would bring their, this will date me, their 16 millimeter films and the film strip projectors and those, and they bring them all to me. I'd have to return all of the movies to the library where we got them, right? And very often they bring me a piece of equipment that didn't work.
Okay.
And they had no way of knowing, no way of figuring out. My job was to do the triage and say, well, this stuff I could fix, and this stuff has to go off to a real repair person kind of thing. So I was sort of the audiovisual guy for the school district.
And who did you work for? Who was your very first boss?
He
You
was a
remember?
teacher.
He was a teacher. Do you remember his name?
I do not. I
Or
can picture him.
or anything about him? How was he?
Yeah. It was a social science teacher, I think. And this was just one of his responsibilities, right? He was coordinating all of that stuff. And yeah, the other thing that I did was in the evenings, I got paid to come back to the school to record PBS specials on the videotape machine that we had.
Okay.
Not everybody had one in their home at this time. This is around 1970, 71, right? So yeah, we would tape these, like the Civil War PBS special or whatever, and I would come in,
record it on PBS,
and I would record.
Okay,
I would record it and then give it to the social studies teachers. I'd come in every week to do the 13-part series.
What a cool job you had.
Oh, it was a great job. It was a great job. I never worked in a retail establishment like you're describing in your book.
And so oftentimes, though, the first job you have when you're entering the workforce is in a retail place or a restaurant. And often, usually, almost all the time, people that I talk to remember their first boss. And that is either a good memory about someone who instilled confidence in them, someone who built them up, someone who showed them what it meant to be a part of a team, someone who believed in them, perhaps taught them customer skills, or the opposite.
Yep. Oh, I can imagine that.
And
very definitely.
And that memory locks into them and is their first experience in the workforce and shapes oftentimes what they think about work and what they think about leadership. And that's why I'm so passionate about empowering and informing and educating frontline leaders for the potential they have to change these young people's lives that come into the workforce.
Oh yeah, that's so insightful, Monica. That because I think back over my career, early on in my career, right? I was a co-op student as an undergraduate, and it was a work study thing. And the woman that I worked for in my work job, I went back to the same place over and over again for like 2.5 years, and she really shaped my understanding of what it was like to be, to do things, to make commitments in the workplace, and that kind of thing. And then the first job that I had out of graduate school after I got my PhD, my boss was horrible, but it also shaped my, and look, he was a really nice guy and he wanted me to succeed. I know that. The problem was that he had been promoted out of the job that I was hired into. And so he knew exactly what I had to do my job. And he made sure that I did it exactly the way he would have done it.
Exactly. There's a chapter in my book where I talk about, a leader who was really kind of not very good. She was rough. She was bad. And I do talk about, though, the as difficult and hard as that situation was, how much I learned about the leader I didn't want to be. Right. I didn't want to be the leader who takes people into the walk-in cooler to give them coaching, to yell at them about their results. I didn't want to be a leader who intimidated people or who people feared, and that's why they performed. I knew even way back then that wasn't the kind of leader that I wanted to be. And the only reason I really understood the power of that is because I had to walk through that myself.
Yeah. No, it really is true that you're shaped both by the positive and the negative experiences that you have of leaders. And I think by drawing out those stories of here's one that really inspired me versus here's one who inspired me to be the opposite.
Right.
Yeah.
And so my challenge to frontline leaders is, do you want to be, who do you want to be when your current team member, that young person, looks back on you 10, 15, 20 years later? Do you want to be someone that they think about fondly, that shaped them and that supported and believed in them? Or do you want to be looked at as the role model of what not to be?
Yeah. Yeah. So what is, what's the key to being an effective frontline leader then?
Oh, this is my favorite. I made a lot of mistakes when I was first in my restaurant. I put on a cape. I was a superhero and I was going to rescue the restaurant. I put in a lot of hours. I worked very long shifts, and I was a former Army officer. So I did an assessment of what needed to happen. What was the current state? What was the current situation? And then what needed to happen in what order, and then deployed people to do those things.
Gave them orders and
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, that didn't work. Not surprisingly, that didn't
Not surprising. No, that's not
surprising
surprising at all. I mean, these are all 16-year-old kids who've never worked for anybody before.
Right.
And they're in the midst of trying to figure out, when do they bow to authority and when do they not?
Well, and I barge in there, large and in charge. I've got a brand new name tag, restaurant manager, and I'm going to tell them, meanwhile, they had been working there. They knew the customers. They had some ideas about what needed to happen there, but I was so busy with the spotlight on me being the hero that I didn't engage them. And I tell a story in my book about how, it all came to a head one day and half the crew literally walked off in the middle of lunch rush. And that was I've had a lot of bad shifts in 30 years, a lot of bad shifts, but that was my worst shift. A dining room full of people, and literally three members of the team just walked away, and I'm on the line slinging tacos and burritos. People are waiting 20, 25 minutes for their food. I could hear the horns honking in the drive-thru. I could hear people screaming, "Who's in charge here? Who's running this place?" They didn't say it that nicely. And after we got through it somehow, and, I had a moment to reflect. I was like, they were so angry. What were they angry about? Well, they were angry at me. They were angry at the fact that I didn't engage with them at all. I didn't even have to change their names for that chapter in the book because I never really learned their names. I didn't know why they worked there. I didn't know their kids' names, let alone the score of yesterday's soccer game. I never asked them like, "Hey, what do you guys think? What do you guys want to be known for at our little Taco Bell outside in the Chicago suburb? How do we want to put our name on the map? And then what do you think we need to do to get better?" I mean, I should have been starting at the very, very beginning, because what I learned and talk about in the book is, before they're going to care about me or the store or the company, they have to know that I care about them in a very genuine and real way. And once they believe, and this is what I learned, once they believe and trust that I will be there for them and that I truly care about them, they will walk through fire. So to answer your question, what does a frontline leader need to know to be successful? It's not about you. You've got to flip the spotlight and put it on your team and love them like you love your own children, and care for them and engage with them as one-on-one. I mean, I'm not talking about like, here's donuts on your birthday. I mean, really knowing what's going on in their lives and how you can help make their dreams come true. That's the unlock. And that unlock then leads to what you talk about on your podcast, which is better productivity. Because then your retention goes down, the skills go up, the teamwork becomes, the team becomes more cohesive. They start to care about each other. And then great things happen. Service improves, speed improves, quality improves. And guess what? Your top line grows, your bottom line grows. That's the formula.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds pretty simple. I'm guessing, I mean, many things that are easy to say are not necessarily easy to do. it does take quite a bit of time and intention and intention to build that kind of rapport with your team, no matter, no matter where you are in management. I remember when I was working at Intel, the last job that I had at Intel, I was managing a team of about 40 people. 20
Wow.
of them were in Santa Clara. The other 20 were in Costa Rica. We built a pretty cohesive team. When I took that job, my boss's customers, my customers were asking my boss, why does that team exist?
Oof.
And I was brought in to keep it from completely falling apart. By the time I left, customers were clamoring to get our service. And I believe it is because I did exactly what you're talking about. I got to know the people that worked for me. I also told them, I said, look, it's important to me that you're excited about what you do here at work. And if you're not excited about what you do, now this is a little different from what you might get at a Taco Bell, but if you're not excited about what you do, come talk to me. I'll find you a project that you are excited about.
It's really not that different, though. It really isn't.
Yeah. Well, so really talk to me about that. The other thing I said, by the way, was if I can't find you a project within the context of my team that excites you, I'll help you find another job.
Perfect. Yeah. Because not everybody's made for every job, right?
Exactly.
That's just the reality of it. And that's such a good feeling as a leader when you can get an entire team moving in one direction and actually believing that what they're doing matters. I tell managers all the time, your team members don't work for the company. In their minds, they don't work for Taco Bell. They don't work for McDonald's. They don't work for, Apple. They work for Steve.
They work for you. That's right.
They work for you. And if they show up, it's because of you. And if you are in a good mood and you make the environment light and fun and engaging and playful, and they have a good time, they're more than likely going to come back. If they're having a bad day and you take time to find out why, you're investing in their trust bank, right? That you can then draw on when the next night somebody doesn't show and you need to call them and say, hey, can you help me out? And they're like, of course, I'll be there in 20 minutes. As far as like, hey, you don't like working the line? Okay, you want to try working the counter or working drive-through? You need to get off 30 minutes earlier so you can make it to, the soccer game on time. You find ways to make things work so that they can stay engaged, they can get excited and take care of their obligations at home. It just requires a different lens and a different focus. And it starts with mindset. The manager has to recognize, I'm not here to serve. This is going to be a little controversial, but I'm not here to serve the customer. I'm here to serve my team. And if my team is happy and trained and they have all the tools they need and the support and they believe that what they're doing is important, then the customer gets amazing service.
Right? Customer service will take care of itself.
It will take care of itself. That's right.
Yeah. That's really insightful. And I also want to call attention to this, this very important relationship between the employee and the manager in terms of employee retention. This is a big topic today. People are really struggling with employee retention. And the statistics are clear, and they have been clear for a long time, that employees almost never leave a job or a company. They leave a manager.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Gallup just came out with I'm sure you saw it. They just came out with their 2024 survey. No surprise. Everything you said is still true times 2. 2 weeks ago, I got to hear the CEO or president of SHRM, Society of Human Resources, who gave a talk. There are currently 8 million open jobs in the country. And 40% of the people who are currently employed are looking. And he said that might be underreported. So the problem that we've had with retention and engagement, is 2x in 2024 than it maybe was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And so now more than ever, we can't just play lip service to this idea of taking care of people and engaging with them and caring about them, investing in them. The things we thought were doing that before, we're not even scratching the surface into what really it takes to get to a point where people feel like, I'm here because I want to be here. I'm here because I'm loved. I'm cherished here. I'm celebrated here.
I'm valued.
I'm valued. Yeah. Yeah.
So thanks, Monica. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
You can reach me at monicarothgery.com, my website, or you can email me at monica.rothgery@gmail.com. I also have a gift for your listeners.
Oh, great.
If you're not really sure about how to relate to frontline leaders, because perhaps there's a gap, and generational gap, or it's been a long time since you've been a frontline leader, I have a gift that kind of just helps start to shine the light on how they think and how fundamental we have to be when we're talking to brand new leaders. The things we think they might understand, they really don't. And we have to start at the absolute minimum basics. Like, I asked a group of coaches, what should we tell frontline leaders? And I have a top 10. And one of the things was, don't yell at the team. Now that sounds like really fundamental, but that's where we have to start with this group. So if you text me at 33777, type in Monica. So send me a text, 33777, type in Monica, and I will send you this PDF on how you could start to relate to frontline leaders and what they need to engage their teams.
Great. Thanks. And that concludes our show. And thanks again to my guest, Monica Rothgery, a champion of frontline leaders and author of Lessons from the Drive-Thru. I hope you learned something about how frontline leaders have the potential to build your business and change lives. I know I did. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Profit Minds podcast. This is your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch. Please visit www.profitminds.net for other episodes or to contact me. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others. Thanks for listening. Have a grateful day.